Is your financial advisor giving you real advice or just selling you something?
Now, that question is way more important than most people realize because how do I know if a financial advisor has my best interests at heart and in their mind?
Exactly. Most people think they're getting personal guidance, but a lot of the time, they're just buying a product right off of the shelf.
And today we're going to help you spot the difference because your family's future literally depends on it. Welcome to our podcast, guys, Keeping It Real, where we talk about real financial problems with real people and come up with real financial solutions. My name is Irene Meyer.
And I'm Philip Villanueva. Welcome, everybody. Here's what we're going to dive into today.
First, the 3 signs that your financial advisor is acting in your best interest, not theirs.
Secondly, the questions you need to ask in your next meeting that can reveal their true motives.
And third, we're going to teach you how to trust your own gut and know what to watch for it if something feels off. So, Bill, let me ask you this. Would you ever trust just anyone to watch your kids?
My kids are a little older now, but when they were younger, definitely not. Like if I was going to bring somebody in to watch my children, I would want to know who they were, kind of, find out if they had any credentials, look at any referrals or, kind of a reference as to who this person is that I'm going to trust my kids to.
Yes,
Sorry.
right. Because your kids are your world, right? Like nothing's more important. But here's the thing, your money is what supports you, your kids, your future, your family. It's time we actually have the same level of care when we apply it to our financial decisions.
Well, you're absolutely correct in saying that, Irene. A good advisor is always going to educate the client before they talk about their product or what it is that they're trying to achieve in that meeting. Because without the education, the client isn't going to know what they're actually doing there. Right? A good advisor is always going to walk you through the why, not just the what. And there's a lot of jargon in our industry, and you're aware of this. And a lot of times, because of the fact that we use that vocabulary on a daily basis, for us as advisors, it becomes common. But that's not common for the client. Advisors forget that, right? So we have to maintain a proper, etiquette when it comes to speaking to our clients, kind of keeping things in layman's terms so that they fully understand what it is that we're trying to achieve on their behalf, right? And that's what's very important is we're maintaining everything to educate the client, make them understand in layman's terms what they need to do. Because if they don't understand it, well, 2 things. One, they're not going to really know what it is that they just did. And secondly, chances are in time, they're going to backtrack on what it is that you tried to achieve for them in the first place. And they're not going to maintain that strategy because they didn't understand it in the first place.
So true. And I think to achieve that, Phil, if you don't mind me continuing with the next point, a great advisor asks a lot of questions. In fact, they ask way more questions than maybe even sometimes you as a client will have answers to. If you think about a very simple metaphor, a simple analogy, you go to a doctor, you've waited an hour, even if you've had an appointment, and you go in there, something's wrong, you tell him what you think is wrong, and he just writes you up a prescription. So you've waited an hour for him to see him, and he takes literally 2 minutes to kind of write you up a prescription. Doesn't ask you questions. Now you kind of feel robbed of that entire appointment and you don't almost feel trusting of what he's given you because you've basically assessed yourself. A good advisor, in addition to giving you the education part of what maybe the gap is in your knowledge of finances, is actually for them to kind of take a step back even further and ask you more questions about literally what you know already. I find that when I'm talking to a client, I am still trying to gauge where they're at with their financial knowledge. So I don't talk above them. I don't want them to feel like I'm talking above them. I want to kind of come to them where they're at with what they know and then use that as a jumping off point so that it helps me actually understand if I'm explaining something to them where their understanding is. So I have to ask more questions.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? And that is kind of one of the key aspects of knowing if your advisor is there for the right reasons. In asking these questions, the advisors should be doing that to figure out who you are, where you're at, just like you were saying, where they're at currently in their personal knowledge, but also in their personal life. The advisor needs to know what's happening in that client's personal life and where what direction they want to head to, right? So by asking the right question, the advisor is getting to know you as a person, as a character, what your personal traits are. Because if the advisor doesn't know what your characteristic traits are, you might be a spender. You might be someone who just loves spending money, right? And your financial plan is going to be problematic if that's the case, right?
Right.
They have to know that. So they have to really get to know you as a person. And if they're not trying to get to know you as a person, they're really not doing their job.
Yeah. And I mean, at the end of the day, even a bonus point here, Phil, where we talk about what happens after the sale. And I hate to use the word sale, but I mean, a lot of advisors kind of relate to that. But after the experience, do they disappear after you've signed the paperwork?
Yeah, well, and you using the word sale actually is appropriate for that comment, because then that whole situation is just transactional, right?
Right.
It's not actually building a relationship. It's literally just a sale, and it's purely transactional.
So if you haven't heard from your advisor in any kind of capacity, whether they've texted you, sent you an email, tried to call you in a year or more, I think it's time to move on.
Yeah, you know what? When you're thinking about a financial advisor, you're thinking about somebody who's gonna guide you through your financial life. Think about this. I'll use this as an example. A basketball coach, right? If you're a basketball coach and you have your athletes coming onto the field, onto the court, and you give them a ball in their jersey and say, "Go play the game," right? That player is not gonna know what to do, right? As a basketball coach, it's not just about giving them the ball and the jersey and start playing. It's about getting them physically conditioned. It's about teaching them the game, teaching them the basic skills. There's a lot of parameters before you actually get to the game as a coach, right? And if you're the parent of that child, you just enrolled them in a basketball season, and all they do is give them a jersey and a ball and say, "Go play the game," you're going to feel like you've been ripped off, right? You're signing your child up to learn the fundamentals and the skills of that sport, to learn the rules of that sport, right? There's a lot more than just the ball and the jersey. However, when it comes to our finances, it's literally the same thing. If that advisor is just giving you the product, the ball and the jersey, and saying, here's your financial life, why do we accept that and don't see the fact that there's no fundamental skills being taught, no conditioning, no rules being laid out, none of the background being given to us as client.
Yeah. So now that you know or don't know how to spot whether your advisor is actually working in your best interest, maybe you're wondering, if my advisor doesn't pass that test that Phil and Irene just put in front of me, what do I do now?
Okay. So on our next video, we're going to walk you through the next 5 questions to ask before actually taking on that financial advisor. So stay tuned for our next video. It's the step that makes everything we talked about today actually possible.